recorded. Also, you should know that I am able to download a attendance list as part of this platform. So your attendance will be recorded as part of the meeting. If you think we don't have your email address, and so Mary and Rita, we just got your email address. If you think we don't have your email address and you would like us to have it, you could either do one of two things. You could either type it in the chat box, or you can email your email address to us so that we can make sure you get email communications from us in the future. Michelle will be typing a link that you can email me directly into the chat box. All right. Okay. So meeting procedures and etiquette. Please keep your microphone muted during the presentation. We have a couple people with their cameras turned on, and I think right now that it's fine. We don't have a ton, we don't have 100 people. If there were 100 people on this, we couldn't all have our cameras on. Quite frankly, I enjoy seeing all of your faces, but if for some reason things start getting slow and moving sluggishly, if you turn off your camera, that helps the presentation move a little faster. So anyway, I'm not going to be a stickler about that tonight, but if it moves slow, that's one of the solutions we can use. There's also a chat window. Please use the chat window if you have questions during the presentation, or if you have anything you'd like to say. The chat window will also be recorded. You will have the opportunity to provide comments to us after the project presentation is over. We like the project team to be able to get through all the details first, okay? And then we'll open it up for question and answers after the presentation. But if you have a question now and you want to get it in the queue, you can go ahead and put it in the chat box, and Michelle will be monitoring the chat box during the presentation. Again, keep in mind that this is being recorded, okay? All right. And now I'm going to pass it over to Justin to start the presentation.
Thank you, Holly. Yeah, so as Holly mentioned, my name's Justin Keene. I work for CRW Engineering Group, and I'm the design project manager. Really excited for this project to be moving forward. So the project is located, of course, along East 42nd Avenue, and the roadway improvement limits extend from Lake Otis Parkway all the way to the east down to Florina Street. And the AWW water improvements, the water replacement, extends from Lake Otis Parkway down to Piper Street. So just a overall project kind of schedule and timeline as to where we are at and where we're planning to head. We recently published the draft design study report back in June of this year, and we are in between basically the draft DSR and final DSR in hopes to finalize that in next month in November. And the project will then be put on hold for a little while as we wait for funds for starting the detailed design. And currently the project design funds are on the MOA roadway bond. So pending that approval, we should be starting the design soon after. And from there, we'll advance into the 65% design, and we'll be involving the public after the 65% design to show everybody where we're at and get more comments and answer questions about the design. We'll accomplish an agency review and then move on to pre-final and final design. And we usually will also have a public involvement event at the pre-final design just to make sure we're keeping the public informed at how the project's looking and where where we're trajecting on, actual construction start dates and whatnot. The ultimate goal, of course, is to get to construction. Right now, based upon funding, we think that construction will begin at the earliest in 2023. It's not yet funded, but so far that's what it's looking like for the initial phase of construction. Because the project is so large, we do anticipate a phased approach on construction. The limits of the project phasing haven't quite yet been determined yet, just because of how that funding shakes out. But once we get into the 65% design, we should have a better kind of layout on what the phasing looks like for the project. So the purpose of the project is to upgrade 42nd Avenue to meet current Municipality of Anchorage design criteria for a local roadway, and also to replace the existing water main from Lake Otis Parkway to Piper Street. As you can see in this photo on the right, the project corridor is narrow with no pedestrian facilities, pretty unsafe for pedestrians and vehicles in some cases. And it has discontinuous drainage facilities and lighting infrastructure. Also, the project is listed as the University Area Community Council's highest priority capital project for 2020 and in past years as well. This slide shows just a couple of existing conditions, not all inclusive. The items to highlight here are the existing right-of-way widths, which is basically the area that the Municipality of Anchorage owns and operates and is able to upgrade, basically their land. It's 66 feet wide from Lake Otis Parkway to Piper Street. And then from Piper Street to Florina Street, it's 60 feet wide. The posted speed limit out there is 25 miles per hour. And typically the roadway is a strip paved roadway. So it looks a lot like what's shown in this upper right photo, where there's no curb and gutter, and obviously no pedestrian facilities. There is some curb and gutter east of Dale Street. There's rolled curb and gutter along that section. And the only pedestrian facility out there along 42nd Avenue is along Foker Park, where the existing trail kind of meanders along the north side of 42nd Avenue. And there's actually 4 distinct segments along 42nd Avenue, different contexts, where there's different land use adjacent to the roadway. The other thing to kind of note here is we've showed sort of the snow-free conditions and a snowy conditions photo of the same location along 42nd Avenue. This is between Dale and Piper Street, and you can really see that our design really needs to accommodate snow storage and snow removal, since of course we live in a snowy city. So that's what we plan on doing, is accommodating those the full year operation of the roadway. So like I was saying, the 4 distinct segments that we kind of broke the project up into include segment A, which is from Lake Otis Parkway to Laurel Street, and it photo shown in the upper right corner here on the slide. And it's mostly businesses with a few single family homes, and there's quite a few areas where there's full frontage driveways, which is not ideal for traffic safety and pedestrian safety along the corridor. Segment B is from Laurel Street to Piper Street, and there's typically there's some businesses, there's Foker Park on the north side, and then there's multifamily and single family homes along that segment. The last segment, the segment C is from Piper Street to Dale Street, and that's what's shown here in the lower right corner. And as you can see, there's a high density of single and multifamily homes and a lot of driveways spaced close together. And the last segment is Dale Street to Florina Street, and there's one business and lots of high density multifamily homes. That's where there's the rolled curb and gutter, and it's kind of a free for all with how people can pull in and out of their parcels. So not an ideal layout currently. So now I'm going to pass the presentation off to Erica to go over the draft design study report and the preferred alternative.
Awesome. Thank you, Justin. Let me just start my presentation. Yes, as Justin said, we published the draft design study report in June, and for each of the roadway segments that Justin just talked about, 2 different alternatives were presented and analyzed for each segment. The alternative 1 for each of the segments is the recommended preferred alternative, because we found that it best balances the various needs of the segment, be that multifamily or businesses or single family homes, and those will be discussed in more detail as I continue forward. We also looked at conceptual traffic calming and pedestrian safety types and locations in the draft design study report. These may change as we get further into the detailed design, but we have started to take an initial look at where these might be appropriate. Other items that will be included in the proposed roadway improvements are an insulated roadway base that helps with the freeze-thaw cycle, as well as installing new pavement. We will have a piped drainage system to improve storm drain. We will have pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roadway. These are all items proposed. Traffic calming and pedestrian safety upgrades, like I mentioned, improved street lighting, and as we've been talking about, 3,000 feet of water main replacement from Lake Otis Parkway to Piper Street. Utility relocations that will be required for improvements, electrical lines such as those other items will also be included with the improvements. Alternative 1, the proposed recommended alternative for segments A and B. We actually combined, as we got further into the design, segments A and B, as we found that they both had the same recommended and analysis for alternatives 1 and 2. I presented here alternative 1. These are the proposed ones. As you can see, we have 2 10-foot lanes with 3.5-foot shoulders on each side. We have a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. I'll show you a plan view here in a second. You can see that. And an 8-foot pathway on the north side. Where feasible, we're going to separate the pathway and the sidewalk from the back of curb. This shows the hydrant as well as the underground water line. And we also have barrier curb and gutter here, which means at driveways, there would be a curb cut to indicate the designated driveway. This is a legend for reference. If you're viewing this online later, all of this will be posted online. This is to help you understand what is shown in the plan view. I'll go over everything you need to know in the plan view, but this is for if you're looking at this later on the website, you can know what each item stands for. Here's the plan view starting for segment A, Lake Otis Parkway to Laurel Street. Again, as a reminder, here is the typical section. This is looking this way. We're looking east. So the 8-foot pathway is on the north side and the 5-foot sidewalk is on the south side. The plan views right now do not currently show the pathway or the sidewalk detached from the back of curb. That's just because this is our initial concept design. As we get further into the detailed design, we will determine locations where the pathway and sidewalk can hopefully be detached from the back of curb. Over on Lake Otis, you'll notice that it looks like we're improving the intersection with Lake Otis. We are not actually changing anything at the intersection, but we do need to extend our storm drain improvements across Lake Otis in order to outfall to the creek right here. So this replacement is purely just in order to extend our storm drain improvements. We will not be changing the layout or configuration at Lake Otis. The other things to note, we have proposed a neck down. That is where literally the curb necks down. That is a traffic calming installation to help with maintain lower speeds for this local roadway. You'll notice that there's a stop sign at Laurel. Laurel will be the stop condition, but 42nd will be the through condition. Again, why we're looking at some traffic calming measures there to improve that. Segment B, Laurel Street to Rawson Court, is the same proposed alternative. We again are looking this way. So the 8-foot pathway is on the north side and the 5-foot sidewalk is on the south side. You will also notice that we have designated driveways. These are conceptual. If they are multifamily, they'll have a curb return. That's what this is called, where the curb is it literally goes around. Whereas if it's a single family home or duplex or triplex, you have a curb cut. They're all still accessible, of course, to your driveway. It just establishes a designated driveway versus the current situation, which is strip paved. There is no designated, here's your driveway location. As we get further into the detailed design, the specific driveway locations will be coordinated further with individual property owners as needed. We have another neck down here proposed for traffic calming at Folker Street. Oops, that's not a very straight line. And Folker Street will be the stopped condition, with 42nd being the through condition. We did a traffic analysis based on the traffic volumes and turning movements and all those other items that go into assessing the warrant for a stop sign. And we did discover that a lot of the stop signs along 42nd are not warranted. And while it might seem like there's some good ideas to go ahead and put a stop sign in, it's actually counterproductive. Putting stop signs in where they're not warranted results in non-compliance of stop signs, not only at this location, but it does have a ripple effect for people in general to not comply with stop signs if they don't feel they're warranted. And it's generally not good practice to put them in if they're not warranted. Because we are removing stop signs, which obviously does require the traffic to stop. That's why we're looking at various traffic calming measures, such as this neck down. We also anticipate having to install a retaining wall along this area. Providence Horizon House is significantly higher in elevation than the roadway, so we'll anticipate needing a retaining wall there to just accommodate that change in elevation. Here you'll notice that the pathway is actually detached from the roadway. This location, we do know we can accomplish this because Folker Park currently has a paved pathway that goes through their park, and we definitely don't need two parallel pathways, so we know we'll be able to detach it here and connect in with the park. Continuing segment B, Rawson Court to Piper Street. We have stop conditions at Wright Street and actually on 42nd right here. So 42nd will be the stop condition and Piper will be the through movement at this location. We do anticipate installing some neck downs to continue with traffic calming. As you can see here, there's another neck down. Otherwise, this is similar to the other ones in terms of installing designated driveways, lighting, storm drain improvement, and such. Piper Street is one I want to talk a little bit more about. Currently, as you can see in this photo, there are existing landscaping features that hinder the ability for a driver to see oncoming traffic, turning traffic, or pedestrians in the roadway. There's a number of crashes that have occurred at this intersection, and although we can't state with certainty, because we can't ask the driver, was it because you couldn't see, based on the nature of the crash, be it an angle collision, we do attribute these crashes likely to the inability for sight distance. And we do know that these hinder sight distance, so it is very likely that the crashes are because of that. Part of this project will remove the vegetation that hinders the sight distance. For example, this retaining wall right here and planter box might be removed. Vegetation that would go back in here or any of the gateway features, that's what this item is called, it's a gateway feature, will be determined later on in the design with the help of a landscape architect to reinstall what is appropriate but still safe and provide adequate sight distance for vehicles and pedestrians. Segment C, moving on to segment C. This is the segment, for a reminder, that has a lot of single family homes spaced close together. We show two 10-foot lanes as well as a 7-foot parking lane. But one thing to note is that we are not proposing any, I love this pointer thing. We are not proposing any roadway markings like paint markings. So for example, this will not be a white line to show that it's a parking lane, and there will not be a yellow line here. Like these won't exist. So even though we show this as a 10-foot lane, a 10-foot lane, and a 7-foot parking lane, the roadway will be just 27 feet of pavement because you have 2 feet on either side for the curb and gutter. It The reason for that is because it is a local road, which normally does not warrant pavement markings. They just become a maintenance expense. And with the low volumes and the low speeds, the drivers in the parked vehicles generally can figure out where to go and what to do. So we're providing and we are accommodating the ability to park on the street, but we are not designating it as here's your parking lane. One thing to note too for segment C, this segment with the individual properties have individual mailboxes. So this is something else that we're accommodating with this. The sidewalk on each side, there are 2 5-foot sidewalks on the north side and the south side. They're both detached from the curb for the entire length of this segment in order to install these private individual mailboxes. Another difference with this segment is this is rolled curb. You heard Justin mention that earlier. Rolled curb means a vehicle can go straight over it into their driveway. Barrier curb, for reference, actually looks more like this. So barrier curb you find on the other segments that we have along this project corridor. With rolled curb, you don't need a designated driveway curb cut or curb return. You can just simply drive over the curb to access your driveway. So here's segment C. We are looking this way. And even though this is actually a symmetrical section, we just have a 5-foot sidewalk on the north side and a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. You can see right here, it's small because it's not very wide, but there is a separation of the sidewalk from the back of curb to accommodate those mailboxes. We show designated driveway widths because there are codes that require maximum widths for driveways, but again, there will be rolled curbs. So for example, this property that has straight pull-in driveways might have a grandfathered in for a non-conforming right to allow for a wider driveway. Those details will be analyzed further in the detailed design process. We have a neck down along Dale Street, and Dale Street is also the stop condition. So you might be wondering why the stop condition also has the neck down. There's some driveways that are pretty close to the intersection that as we're going to look at the most appropriate location for the traffic calming, like I said, further in the design, but right now it does look like these driveways might be too close to the intersection to allow the neck down to be on the other side. Segment D is our last segment. We are back to our barrier curb and gutter and 2 10-foot lanes with 3.5-foot shoulder. Although if you do the math, this is the exact same as 2 10-foot lanes with a 7-foot parking lane, since there will be no striping indicating here's your lane, here's your shoulder. There will be the ability to park on street, but again, we are not designating it as here is on-street parking. Because this segment has a lot of improvements close to the right-of-way, we are proposing to have the sidewalk on both the north side and the south side attached to the back of curb to minimize the improvements that are existing structures close to the right of way, but still providing pedestrian facilities for the people that do walk along this segment. Here's our last segment. And again, we have the 5-foot sidewalk on the north side, as well as a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. This segment is looking this way. This segment had quite a bit of a challenge based on the year of construction of a lot of these parcels. We do believe that they might have grandfathered rights for non-conforming determinations, which means in plain English that they might be allowed to have driveways wider than the current code. You can see a lot of these parcels have pretty wide driveways that span the whole length of the property. As we get further into design, we will determine if this is actually the case and if we can accommodate that. These wider driveways, as you can see, a lot of them pull straight into their parcels and their parking. Other ones that were constructed later have and do meet current code or can meet current code will be reconfigured, such as here, where you can pull in from a designated driveway into a parking space and still meet maneuvering requirements. However, parking spaces that are currently located in the right-of-way, for example, we have some here as well as over here, these will not be able to be accommodated as they are in the right-of-way, and that doesn't allow for proper maintenance or pedestrian maneuvers that are something that we want to provide in the right-of-way. Next steps, we will finalize the design study report. We will incorporate comments from you, the stakeholders, and the agencies that review it, such as maintenance and lighting. And then after it's finalized, we will route it for signatures and approval by the municipality of Anchorage, project management and engineering. That's where Russ works, AWU, and also the traffic. The design, like Justin mentioned earlier, is not currently funded. It is on the April 2021 bond package, so don't forget to vote for that. And we will implement the preferred alternative that is identified in the design study report for the design as we go forward and figure out all those other details like I had been talking about. We will have additional public meetings after the 65% and 95% complete design, so you will still have choice or availability to comment and give us your opinions and questions. With that, I will actually turn it back to Holly for questions.
Okay, thank you. So I'll have you keep your presentation up in case you need to refer to drawings again, okay. Erica. So we have 2 questions so far in the meeting chat. And then if you have other comments or questions that you would like to bring up, you can raise your hand and I will add you to the queue. Okay. So first I'm going to start with, okay, hold on. People are joining us. Okay. Rodney, would you like to speak or would you like me? Yours is kind of a question and a comment, Rodney, and I'm happy to just read it or if you'd like to talk about it.
Sure, I'm happy to talk.
Okay, go ahead, Rodney.
So many of us were very involved in the original design of Piper. So now you're talking about removing traffic calming measures taken when the collector status road was punched through our neighborhood. That was part of the deal, was we requested and we got traffic calming measures. Those vegetative elements, the barriers, were all intended, and the joke of a raised intersection that was not installed properly were all intended to slow traffic, cut through traffic, right, through our neighborhood so pedestrians could move safer.
Okay.
And so why would you want to remove those? Why don't we just maintain the visibility issues by Muni does no maintenance?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to ask Russ, I'm going to ask you first because I'm just checking to see if you have any history on that project.
I do not have a lot of history on that project. That was done with as a private development by Providence Boulevard. They actually got an agreement where the city paid part of it, and then they hired their own engineer and they went in and built it themselves. But there was agreement, the city was part of it. And yes. Now we are talking with traffic about this, and we've just kind of started the negotiations of what are they going to allow us to put back in because of site distances with the changes to this intersection with this improvement. And we're at the early stages of that right now. We don't know what it's going to look like in the end at this point, but we are in agreement that was all part of and Justin will come in and correct me on anything I misstate here, but I think we're in agreement that was all part of an approved system overall, and we're going to try to maintain as much of it as our traffic department is going to allow.
So I think what I'm hearing, Rodney, is that the Muni is going to do the best they can to put back in elements that meet, that were part of that project because it's beautiful, right? So they just don't know exactly what that is.
It's not beautiful.
It's not just beautiful, it's functional. It's working. It's working.
It was fine when it was first installed, but then of course they didn't maintain it. So the trees need to be limbed up, right? The bushes need to be cut down, and that will solve the sightline issues.
Okay.
And the raised intersection is an absolute joke. If you want a real raised intersection, go look at McKinnis, right? That one works. You slow down or you're going to notice it. You don't even notice this one. It was not installed properly. It was supposed to be a 6-inch raised intersection. So we get a lot of people flying by.
Okay, so for the notes, Michelle, we've got speeding, and you have all those details, correct? Yeah. Okay. Mary has a question now, and I think this one is for Erica. And this one is, will there be any humps? And I'm assuming you're talking about speed humps on the street on segment C. Is there anything you want to add, Mary?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wasn't aware of the raised intersection issue to try and slow traffic down, but since I've been here for a couple of years now, it's always been a problem. People go whizzing by easily 40, 50 miles an hour. It's crazy. And the other thing is that over the summer we had some road work and they installed a temporary traffic bump thing. And it was actually nice because few people kind of probably tweaked their bumpers, but then the traffic kind of slowed down. And I know I've talked to other people in this area, and they say also that's the main problem, is that these cars just go whizzing by and there's no way to slow them down. So I hope we can get some kind of a traffic bump there or whatever will work to slow these cars down. School buses, empty school buses even go by. They're really interesting to watch when they're fast.
Erica, do you have a response to that?
Yeah, we definitely will look at the most appropriate traffic calming feature. Speed humps they've gotten mixed reviews. Some studies show that they do absolutely zero to slow down traffic because you only get somebody slowing down right before the speed hump and then speeding up right after it. Mm-hmm. And there's also reviews or studies that show that they're really detrimental to the parcels that are located right next to the speed hump because they do get all of the people slamming on their brakes before the speed hump and then speeding up afterwards. So the speed humps come with a lot of different aspects that we have to look at. That doesn't mean we aren't going to look at them. We absolutely will, but they are a little more complicated than, say, a neck down or a raised intersection that doesn't have that stop-start aspect that the speed hump would have. But we will be looking at, for sure, what is the most appropriate traffic calming feature to install for each segment of the roadway.
Does a neck down only occur at intersections?
You can actually there have been locations where we do mid-block neck downs. They're normally in conjunction with a pedestrian crosswalk that helps to kind of highlight that there's a pedestrian crosswalk here. It also reduces the distance the pedestrian has to cross because the curb is further in. But typically the neck downs are at intersections for a couple of reasons. It prevents vehicles from parking too close to the intersection, which, going back to the sight distance, does hinder sight distance. It also reduces the distance that a pedestrian has to cross, which gives the priority kind of to the pedestrian in that situation by reducing the time that they're in the roadway. So typically neck downs do occur at intersections, but they're not exclusively there.
Okay, yeah, because my house is more or less in the middle of the block between Dale and Piper. And if there was any way, because that's just kind of, I feel like that's when they're reaching maximum speed. And, if there was any way to slow them down and you had to put something in front of my house, I would not have a problem with it at all.
Okay. Thank you. That is good to know.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. We're going to move on to Judy now. I'm going to ask the question, Judy, and if you have any follow-up, you can chime in. So, Erica, the question is, what are the two black dashed lines adjacent to the road? Which is the road right away? So maybe if we can get a picture of...
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes. Like here, I'm assuming the two black dashed lines are blue dashed lines. Black.
Go ahead, Judy, if you want to...
There, on your guide, it says the dashed black lines are right away, but you have two sets of, see at the top, existing easements, but you have two black dashed lines parallel to each other. And so which is the real right away?
So there's some areas along...
Go to B. Go to section B is the one I'm concerned about.
Like here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you can't see my mouse, I don't think, but
what parcel are you looking at? Like parcel 108?
Where am I? 111, I guess it
111. Oh,
110.
okay. I see what you're asking.
110 is also real distinct.
Yeah, so there are some parcels along this right-of-way or this roadway segment that have actually been, I need to move to present from current slide to get my pointer. So for example, right here, this blue line looks like it goes all the way to the center of the roadway.
Yeah.
That's because this parcel 110, this part of the can't draw straight was designated per easement. I'm probably going to get my survey term wrong, or per patent or per reserve. It was designated as right of way per a legal different method than say parcel 156, which was platted. It's
Wait a second. That's excuse me, but if you look at 110, you have the straight line that you just drew, the red one on the dash straight lines. And right below that, before the pedestrian thing, is another dashed black line. So which one? Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So that was my second point. That.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't following.
No, totally fine. I was also explaining that that's why some of these right-of-way lines are blue and some are black, is because some are technically designated per easement, not per plat, but they function the same way in terms of available right of way for the muni, and also what the muni maintains and is responsible for. This other black line that I now see you are looking at, ooh, that's gonna be fat. This one right here, that continues over here.
Correct. Correct.
That's what we call a cut line. So when we change the elevation of the roadway, we don't show it on that. The existing ground, say example, the existing ground is, for a cut line, the existing ground might be up here. And when we come in and do our improvements, we have to match this existing ground. We can't just leave this like hole. So this black little dashed line that kind of veers in and out is where this limit is for, we're cutting.
Oh, you moved this. I was on B.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I'll go back to B. There we go. This line, this little black dashed line, is not as thick as the easement one, just indicates where we have to cut existing ground in order to match. So if the existing ground is all the way up here, we're gonna have to come in and kind of do some grading and remove some earth in order to make our roadway improvements and construct them and allow proper drainage and all those other things that are necessary.
Okay, so then
I think I'm going to add and just say that you'll likely see road and ground disturbance up to that point within the right.
That's a good way to put it.
This concern we have is that there may be trees in the way, large mature trees in the way that need to not be just removed for your easement gradient. That's really the concern I have on that. Right where your B, your big symbol showing that it's B. Yeah, right in there are large trees. Right. Yeah. Sort of above that.
So the trees that like right here?
Yeah, there's one, and then there's another one by your first circle.
Right here.
Mm-hmm.
So those trees are on property, and that means based on our initial disturbance limits, thank you, I like that word, Holly, based on our initial disturbance limits, these trees would not be impacted. They would be protected. So what we actually do when we get into the detailed design is we look at these trees, and when we have trees that are very not just like a stand of shrubs, but we have trees that are really established in there, we'll actually put what's called a root protection zone. And the contractor comes in and constructs a little root protection around this tree. So that way it's very clear that this tree needs to be maintained. So when they're doing any ground disturbance, if your tree is over here, your big, beautiful tree, there'll be a little protection right here. and ground disturbance will occur over here, but not over here where the trees' roots and other things are.
Right. Well, it's very, very close is
it looks close. It looks close on this figure, but it probably is about 10. So for reference, this is 8 feet. So you're probably looking at 10 to 12 feet.
Oh.
Okay. I think I'm going to move with, thank you so much. That was a good discussion, and way to have eagle eyes on that drawing, Judy. That was a good discussion. Help everybody understand what was going on. Okay, I'm going to move to Emily. I'm going to read her question and comment and then have her add in if she wants more. And I saw your hand go up, James, and I'll put you in the queue. Okay, Emily, thank you for including traffic calming on this project. Unfortunately, neck downs are dangerous for bicyclists on the roadway because it forces them suddenly into motorized traffic. What other types of traffic calming would be options for this project? And I think I'll go to you, Erica, unless you want to give it to another team member.
Yep, totally fine. That is definitely one of the trade-offs of neck downs. I mentioned earlier the trade-offs of speed humps. The trade-offs of neck downs is it does take away that shoulder area that is used by bicyclists frequently at these intersections. You can see that it, you know, here's your curb, and then all of a sudden your curb line's up here. So yes, it is a very true point, and it is the downside, one of the downsides of neck downs. For local roadways, though, we do tend to consider neck downs more than, say, a collector road, or definitely not on our arterial. And specifically on this one, because we are not adding pavement markings, we won't have a designated bike lane. It doesn't remove the downside of the neck down, but it doesn't also, we don't have a designated bike lane that then we are forcing the bicyclists to leave their designated lane. They would have to travel in the roadway for that section, or there are designated pedestrian facilities. And I know, again, you're mixing modes. You've got pedestrians, bicyclists, or you've got bicyclists and vehicles. And ideally you don't mix modes, but for the context of a local road, a neck down is one of the options we're considering. We will look at others. Gateway features are considered, as our comment earlier, gateway features can be considered a traffic calming measure. There are speed humps. There are other things we will look at, but it's balancing the pros and cons of each of the traffic calming features, as well as the context of the road. This is generally a low volume road, so it might be not the worst downside versus some of the other ones. But yes, you make a good point, and it's very valid that it is the downside of neck downs.
So Emily, do you have anything further you want to discuss or add to that?
Nope, that was great. Thank you so much, Erica.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Emily. Okay, I'm going to move on to NM. Hello. And this is going to be a question for James. Why is the water main replacement only from Lake Otis to Piper and not all the way to Florina?
Okay, well, first I'll go back to the disturbance area and kind of put in my caveat in there. You saw, can we go back to that other diagram?
On my chicken scratches?
Yeah.
There it is.
I'll wait till it shows up on my screen. There it is. There is a small triangular thing that you can see on lot 110 or parcel 110. That is a water service key box. Part of the water project will be removing and replacing the main and all the services. So we'll be digging up that key box. So there's going to be some additional disturbances outside of the dashed black line that was discussed earlier.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just going to say, just to follow up, for the people who care about that specifically, as the design develops into more detail, those are the things you're going to want to be looking for your own knowledge. Okay, thanks. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, going back to the water mains, I always like to equate this to, we own a bunch of vehicles out there, our vehicles happen to be water mains. Some are made better than others. The part that we're replacing is like a 1980s car with a lot of mileage, and it's in poor shape and needs to be replaced. The portion to the east of Piper Street is in much better shape. It's a 2000 model. It's got low mileage, and everything's looking pretty good with it. So we have basically two different types of beams. One's cast iron, one's ductile iron. One has a history of brakes, one doesn't. So one needs maintenance, actually in this case replacement, and the other one does not.
Okay. Thank you, James. I think that answers it pretty good. Is there any other follow-up you want to add to that? Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to Brian now. Regarding individual mailboxes between Piper and Dale, was any thought given to locking cluster mailboxes?
So glad somebody asked this question. Yes, there was. It is a preferred use of, and for many reasons, safety, delivery, all these other aspects. Yes, cluster mailboxes are something I think most people would assume are the preferred alternative. However, to actually install a cluster mailbox, you would be very surprised at the logistical hoops we have to jump through. Every single homeowner within the affected area, so you can see all of them in this area, has to agree to move to a cluster mailbox. If even one homeowner says, no, I don't want a cluster box, then it's killed. There's no cluster box. There's also some, it honestly doesn't frequently happen that you get complete 100 consensus. There hasn't been everything worked out either on, does the post office then install the cluster box, because then it's the post office's box, or is it the Munis box, but it's not the Munis system, it's the post office system. So while it seems straightforward, hey, take these individual boxes and let's make a cluster box, it's not straightforward. And unfortunately, we have found through multiple projects where we have tried to do that, it has always been shot down and failed.
Okay, thank you. Brian, do you have any follow-up to that?
No, I don't. Thanks for the answer.
Okay, thank you. So Judy has another question. Erica, why was the bike trail placed on the north side instead of the south side?
Yeah, let me get to that one. So the reason we placed it on the north side was when we looked at the adjacent items, one of them that really stood out was Folklore Park and Providence Horizon House, which does have a residence community. So that was our initial reason for placing it on the north side, was just to kind of continue what is existing here with Folklore Park and Providence Horizon House.
Okay. Any other follow-ups to that, Mary? No? Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions in the queue. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I'll go to the last slide for you then, Holly.
Okay.
You want to take this one though?
Okay. All right, we do have one more.
Oh, perfect.
Judy.
Enough questions.
I'm not sure, you know, what kind of landscaping will be added?
Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to that picture of here. Yeah. So this type of landscaping is pretty involved. It's a gateway feature. We do know that it was part of a bigger process, a whole planning process for this area. So this level of landscaping in terms of the gateway feature, this beautiful item, also functioning as traffic calming and representing the neighborhood, we don't anticipate that level along the project corridor. It is a local road, which which per code doesn't require a specific type, style, or actual volume of landscaping. However, we do know that landscaping will be impacted with our construction and our both roadway and waterline improvements. I don't know exactly what landscaping will be installed, but normally it's a combination of trees and shrubs and plants. One of the goals of the landscaping is to provide aesthetics, but also not encourage places for loitering or sleeping or other aspects that you don't want to encourage that use. So we have a landscape architect on the team who is significantly more skilled at this than I am and who will have the right answer. That is something that will go on during the detailed design. So like Holly mentioned earlier, those are things to watch for as we move forward. And if you're interested in a specific parcel or specific area, that when we get to that point of the design, those are great conversations to have with the team, and we can bring in the landscape architect to discuss specifically what might be some goals and what's actually reasonable in terms of maintenance and site distance and safety and all those other items.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Erica, can you move to segment C, please?
I sure can.
Okay, Rodney has another question, and he asks, why are 2 sidewalks and off-street parking required? That's a lot of pavement and might affect and will affect existing uses.
Yes. So actually, what is required is wider than what we're proposing. If you look at the Muni Code and the design development requirements, a road like this, segment C, which is a local road with individual houses, actually requires 2 parking lanes and 11-foot wide travel lanes. So oops, where's my mouse? Oh, my mouse is gone. Maybe I'm just on color white. That could be the problem. So it actually requires 11-foot lanes here. So this would be 11. This would be 11. And another parking lane. So you'd have another 7 feet over there. So that's what's actually required. So when we looked at it, as you mentioned, it would significantly impact the use and the adjacent properties. So we proposed that we reduce it, that we don't do this other 7-foot parking lane. We make these 10. It functions as a traffic calming feature, the narrower lane. So that is another additional benefit. We do know that as a local roadway that people park on the street. So it's something we do want to provide. We want to accommodate it. People might have 3 cars. Hopefully they're not always parking on the street, but we did do a parking study. And there are a couple of locations where there is continually parking on the street. But even if you don't always park on the street, you might have some friends over. And so local roadways, one of their intent is to provide direct access to the properties. And that includes being able to park near where you're going. So it's something we do want to provide, but knowing that the area has a lot of established residential homes, some of them are pretty close to the right of way in terms of their structure. You can see these are not that far set back. We did want to minimize the impacts to the area. So we did narrow up the paved vehicular traffic area. And another goal we had with this segment along the whole roadway actually was providing 2 pedestrian facilities. It is part of the requirement, but there are some communities that we have found 2 pedestrian facilities, 1 on each side, is not necessarily the best for that context. For this area, we really did want to provide that double pedestrian access. There are a lot of people in this area who work in the UMed district and bike and walk. So our goal was to reduce the vehicular paved area but still providing what is appropriate, and also making sure we provide 2 pedestrian facilities. I'm not sure if I totally answered your question, so please let me know if you have a follow-up.
What do you think, Rodney? Does that answer your question? Okay. I'm going to move on to Felisa's question. Rodney? Okay, we're going to move on to Felisa's question. Felisa wants to know, what are the best options for traffic calming? We have neck downs in the plan and state that speed humps are not always ideal. Felisa wonders if there's any other feasible options for traffic calming in this section. And Felisa, which section were you referring to? Did you have a segment in mind?
Mainly section C.
Okay.
So traffic calming it's really a challenging one because part of improving the roadway, when you get rid of the potholes, you do tend to
is now exiting.
Encourage, you have a smooth road. So while we want to improve the road, we also do want to make sure we aren't encouraging speeding. It is difficult to accomplish that by purely infrastructure alone, and by infrastructure I mean the neck downs or the speed humps, or gateway features, because they all have pros and cons. They all have maintenance requirements to it. They all have some negative aspect, a loss of the bike lane or the stop and start of the speed hump. And another big downside of speed humps is they slow down emergency response vehicles. So your fire trucks, your ambulances. And so they have now created some speed cushions, which have little channels in it, perfectly positioned to accommodate a fire truck's wheels. So there's a lot of items in the toolbox, but they're not all appropriate for every context or use. And it's a balancing act of maintenance, traffic, context. Some of the things we have done to help slow down vehicles, and what I was mentioning earlier, is we have a narrower pavement section. And by allowing on-street parking, a parked car is a good traffic calming measure. It will make you slow down. So without trying to have a lot of negative side effects that can come with some installed infrastructure, there are things we have tried to do: narrow travel lanes, allowing for but not designating on-street parking. The improved lighting and the presence of pedestrians should encourage slower volume or slower traffic. Most of the traffic in this area is local, and I know that's not that not everybody's going to follow that there's going to be people who speed regardless. But if you're a local traffic user and you live in this area and you walk the area, you will be more likely to also slow down. So yeah, that's a hard question to answer. There's a lot in the toolbox, but there are also a lot of pros and cons to each that don't always fit in the context of what we're working for.
Do you have any follow-up, Felisa?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we have 2 questions and 1 comment about kind of snow and snow maintenance. The first one is about the neck downs specifically, Erica.
Yes.
Will the neck downs narrow the road too much when there's snow and ice in the winter? Janine is concerned about the road getting blocked.
Yes, that is one of the maintenance negative side effects that I was referring to with neck downs. It requires the snow plow operator to actually know where the curb narrows. You will often see little Carcinite markers. They're just little vertical things that stick up, and these little vertical things would be located around this neck down. Like there'd be one there and one there and one there, so that the snowplow operator hopefully knows where they are. I do live in a neighborhood that has neck downs, and frequently what happens is the shoulder doesn't get plowed, but it gets plowed up to the curb at the neck down. So the road doesn't actually get any more narrow than it is at the neck down. So it won't be impassable, I guess, but it will function more as traffic calming, as a lot of times happens in our winters. So yeah, it's one of the downsides. Maintenance does not like neck downs with snow plowing.
So
yeah.
But also, well, what about situations where the snow plow doesn't come? Sometimes there's so much snow in a bad snow year, the snow plow won't even get to the street, and the snow will pile up if the snow, and that can be difficult to get around, even on a, with not any neck downs. But I'm concerned that it'll just be blocked from, the snow before the plow even gets there.
Yeah, it won't be blocked. But just like anywhere in Anchorage, there's priorities for streets that get plowed, and sometimes our street is not the priority. That I think it's what, like an ABC schedule. Sometimes our street is not their priority, and yeah, but it won't be blocked. The neck downs, from all the neck downs we have installed around the city, it functions the same as any other challenge during the winter for snow plowing, but it's never prohibited passage.
Okay, and I just want to follow up with a comment from Rodney too. Rodney's concerned about snow storage and who will maintain the sidewalks in the winter.
So Russ maybe can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the Muni has I'm trying to think. I know collector roads have different. Russ, actually, do you know this one?
I do okay. Actually, because I live on a road that's impacted by it. And what happens is as a homeowner, I start my winter by shoveling it, and then the snow plows come by, and over the course of about 3 snows, block the sidewalk. But over the course of the winter, 2 to 3 times a winter, our street maintenance guys will come in, and they'll actually come in with either a plow or a loader and actually physically load all that snow out and open up the sidewalks. But there will be periods of time where they won't be passable. It just depends on how much snow we have and how frequent the snows are every winter, and that's. It's a frustrating thing. The road I'm on is the last block tying our neighborhood right to the school at the end of the road. And so the school kids are walking out along the road and all. So I know the frustration there. But they are limited with staff and time and everything else. So and we are required to build the roads we're required to build. So that with the amenities we have. So they do the best they can. And that's all I can happen with it. That's probably not going to satisfy the question, but that's the reality of what I see happen.
Okay, thank you, Russ. So Rodney has one more comment. He is concerned. It sounds like you have a smaller car, a sedan, that won't be able to enter your driveway with such a wide road design. And maybe that has to do with steeper cuts. And maybe, is there a specific section of the road that you want to talk about here?
C.
Okay,
can you explain that? Help me understand your question a little more. You're worried about your car being able to enter the roadway?
Correct. I have a sports sedan and it's fairly low.
Okay.
So when I enter my driveway and I have to go up, I'm going to have to go up at a much steeper angle. And I have the highest lot pretty much on the road. And I have a neighbor that has a fairly high lot and fairly steep driveway as well. So we're talking, just so everyone's clear on C, right? You're going to go from 25.5 feet of pavement to what, 47 feet of pavement?
Only 27 feet of pavement and then 2 feet of curb and gutter, 2 on each side. So,
okay. But it's essentially pavement, right? Because nothing's going to grow in that 3-foot section, right? So it's
correct. I see what you're saying. Yes, then yes.
Sidewalks, right? It's going. It's a significant, almost a doubling. All right. Of green space is going to disappear and go, right? And our driveways that are impacted, cut through this, if they already have a steep angle, right, where they have to go up, right, but it was made manageable, the elevation will change for our driveways. So
Yes.
it potentially makes them unusable and unsafe, especially in winter on a north-facing driveway, like I have.
Yeah. So one of the things we do when we do a road design is we come and look at, I'm just going to draw on my little guy down here. This is going to be an exaggeration, but this is to help you understand that, yes, that is something we absolutely look at when we do a road design, because that is not our goal, is to make anything not only unusable, because we can't make it unusable. We cannot do a design that results in something unusable. But usable can be relative, like maybe it does meet code, but it really is not realistic that it can be functional to the property owner. So, for example, let's just say your driveway's way up here. Again, this is exaggeration, but this is something that we're going to look at. And you're right. If our road was down here, you would essentially be looking at a driveway right here, which not at all usable, because there are slope requirements for this sidewalk to meet the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we can't make this sidewalk super steep. We can make the buffer a little steep. We don't gain much by it because it is only 3 feet. So what we do when we look at the roadway is it's a very iterative process. And if we know that a driveway is way up here, we'll actually raise the elevation of the road up here. So then the road looks more like this. And you come in and you have a little bit of a curve, but you don't have something that's going to prevent your car from bottoming, or prevent your car from using it, and your car won't bottom out. Another thing we try to do is, instead of making the whole driveway, like we could maybe come back here and make the whole driveway steeper like this. But we all know what happens when you do that. Your car just slides down the driveway in the middle of the winter. So what we prefer to do is, and again, we talk to each homeowner about this because maybe the homeowner does prefer that. But what we look at first is, can we provide a level area for parking with a reasonable slope? So again, you won't bottom out, and then back to the roadway. So looking at all the impacts over on the property is actually how we set this elevation right here of the roadway. So yes, it is a concern that we are very aware of, that actually is part of the design from the beginning. It's not something we look at after we've done the road. We're like, oh shoot, we messed up that driveway. It's a part of the design.
Okay, thank you for that very much, Erica. So Rodney, it sounds like there'll be more collaboration with you individually in the future. So. And thanks for explaining that, Erica. I think people really liked that explanation. It helped people understand what was going on and part of how roads are designed. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, friends, we have 13 minutes left. Last call. Any other questions? You furiously typing? Are you furiously typing your questions? Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. But if you're still typing, it's okay. All your questions and comments today have been documented, and the team will be reviewing them one by one as they finalize this design study report. It doesn't stop here. If you think of something else, if you review the presentation after today, if you think of something in the middle of the night or while you're eating breakfast, you can email all your questions or comments to me and we'll get them answered. Holly at huddleak.com. All of the documents that we're talking about, all of these meeting materials will be available at the project website, including all our contact information if you want to reach out to us there too. 42nd Avenue upgrade.com. So you can go there and get all this stuff. In addition, there will also be a self-guided virtual public meeting available on the website. So you can go through all these materials on your own time. Again, or if your neighbors or somebody that you think is going to care about this project didn't have the opportunity, they can both watch this presentation. We'll We'll upload this presentation to YouTube so you can watch it again if you want. Your neighbors can watch it. Also, you can tell your neighbors about a virtual self-guided tour of the project. Okay. That's everything. I guess I want to thank the project team. That was, thank you. And I want to thank you all for taking your time tonight. Stay involved as the project progresses. Any final words, I guess, from you, Russ and James?
I have one thing. I want to thank everyone for participating in this. This is a odd time we're living in, and it's just nice to be able to get any comments whatsoever and be able to utilize this. These guys have put together a good presentation and reacting in the way that we kind of have to in today's world. Hopefully, next open house we'll be able to have in person, face to face.
Any final words from you, James?
No.
Okay. Again, I appreciate everyone's time very much. We're here for follow-up if you need us. Otherwise, have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for spending your evening with us. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.